Nathaniel Gavronsky here, and I am in Williamsburg, Virginia. This is the colonial capital of Virginia, and like I talk to you guys about a lot, I like to show you guys what the area that I'm talking about looked like at the time of this time period which I'm speaking. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you about the gunpowder incident. Now, see, around me is very, very dark. This colonial capital is, there's over 80 buildings that are original, and there's a few other ones that have been rebuilt. But this is kind of what it looks like. In fact, this magazine behind me, this is original. This original spot. This is it. So here's what happens into the gunpowder incident. So April 19th, 1775. You have the shot heard around the world at the Lexington Green and the Battle of Concord's North Bridge. If you watched my earlier video on the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution, you've seen what's going on there. Now, here's where it gets tricky. Either the royal governors of all these colonies were coordinating these activities, or it was this dumb coincidence, or luck, or fate. But Lord Dunmore, who had been governor of Virginia since 1870, 1871. He was governor of New York before then. He comes on the Williamsburg. He doesn't convene the House of Burgess. He tries to strong arm everything in the colony, and he's fighting these little wars called the Dunmore Wars against Native Americans. Well, he can't do that without the House of Burgess because he needs to finance it. So he's got to bring the House of Burgess back into session. The very first thing they do in 73 and again in 74 is creating these committees of correspondence, these committees of safety. These are basically kind of like or becoming extra legal parliaments across the continental eastern seaboard of the colonies, because the governors are ruling with iron fist after the Townshend Act and the Intelligible Acts, which were basically shutting down the ports and taking local rule away from the colonial legislatures. So there's a lot of fervor going around here in Williamsburg. In fact, the Committee on Safety and Extra Legal, Parliament of the House of Burgess is now meeting in Richmond at a church in Richmond, Virginia, and this is where Patrick Henry famously gives his speech in March before the shot heard around the world about "Give me liberty or give me death." That takes place in Virginia before the shot heard around the world. So this fever, this tension is building. So that night of the 20th, has word gotten down to Virginia yet or not? There's debate on that. A lot of people think that the word had gotten down to Virginia, that the battles of Lexington and Concord are taking place. For Dunmore, he's not taking any chances. There are 15 barrels of half full of powder in here, along with some other provisions. He orders them removed. He moves them to a ship closer towards the shore. Don't forget, Williamsburg is not that far from the original settlement of Jamestown, and the ships are not that far from here. And so he orders these ships to be, filled up with all this that's in this gunpowder magazine behind me. Well, people of town in the colony find out about it, and they come down here, and they start to storm Williamsburg. The gubernatorial palace is actually I'd say about a mile that way from where I'm standing, down the Palace Green, which I can actually see from where I'm standing. And they are demanding that the powder be returned, because this is for the colony. This isn't the governor's powder. This isn't the crown's powder. This is the colony's powder. This is their defense mechanism. There are Native Americans. There are situations where the militia will need this stuff for protection. They end up coming up with a compromise where they actually pay Patrick Henry a little over 330 British pounds for the cost of the powder and the shot and everything else that's taken out of here. Well, that's not really enough, and there's some sources say that he takes the money or takes partial of the money, but it doesn't really solve the issue. In fact, they're still complaining about, you need to return our property to us. This is our property, not the Crown's. There's a couple more incidences. James Monroe actually becomes politicized from this incident. He was actually marching from William and Mary's college campus down to the gubernatorial palace with a bunch of other students. This is for James Monroe, this is his initiation into the Revolutionary fever. Patrick Henry, starts marching and doing drills of the militia on the William and Mary campus. On the night of the 3rd or 4th of June, people break into the gubernatorial palace and start taking things, guns, gunpowder shot, and a few other items. They weren't really sure if it was the 3rd or the 4th, but we know James Monroe was part of this. And then on the 24th of June, there's worry about this being raided again, and so some colonists start breaking into it to get some information, and they get some of the powder and stuff in it, but it's booby trapped, and it goes off, alarming the guardsmen. It's in this tower, this little building right behind me, which is where the guardsman for this powder magazine is, wakes them up, and then now there's another incident where people were trying to steal the gunpowder. And this tension is just mounting and mounting. Dunmore is actually forced to flee the capital area. He's not safe here. He's actually, parked off on one of the ships off the coast. He comes back and forth. He has a little hunting lodge not too far away from here, and he's trying to organize and order, troops to come in. He does a proclamation trying to get slaves to join the British side and to pick up arms against the plantation owners here, which doesn't really help things much. And when a lot of these conscripts, a lot of these volunteers end up dying on the ships because he has nowhere to put them, and they end up staying in really bad conditions, and a lot of them die. There was one group of the Ethiopian regiment, and most of them all die on the ships waiting to do something, and they win a couple of battles, but for the most part they're put in non-combat areas, and most of them die on ships because of conditions. Then you get to the December 9th battle at the bridge, which is now the Chesapeake area, and that's pretty much the end of Dunmore. Dunmore goes back to the ships. His armies are defeated. He's never able to recapture or take back control of Williamsburg, Virginia. He sets sail for New York, and that's where he stays there until returning to England, and at the end of the conflict here in North America. But after he leaves, the colony of Virginia is de facto independent. Patrick Henry, who has basically organized and run the safety committees here, takes up shop as the governor of Virginia and serves 5 one-year terms initially here in Williamsburg. And Virginia, actually, a couple days before the delegates in Philadelphia declare independence from the British crown. And the shot heard around the world was fired in Massachusetts, but independence was first declared here in Virginia. And so I think that's an interesting term. It's North and South. It's a unified front against the Parliament, especially Lord North's way of governing and managing the situation, where he has completely lost all of the colonies from North and South on trying to strong-arm the colonies as far as how to run each of the colonies by removing local legislatures, removing home rule, not consulting the legislative bodies on certain acts, which might have been able to prevent the war from breaking out, but not giving in or just being so sure that you have the right to order someone around and determine someone's livelihood without having them to be part of the conversation seems to show that it worked, and it worked against them. And so again, I like to show these areas as they looked when the incidents took place. That's why I'm doing this at night. I am going to come in and show you a little bit about this during the daylight hours, so you guys can see what it looked like. I'll show you guys the palace, and I'll show you guys the Capitol building here. So I'm gonna see you guys here in a couple of seconds when it's all nice and bright, and kind of show you a little bit more around Williamsburg. But I'm gonna turn off the light real quick so you guys can see it in its pure dark and glory of what this actually looked like. This is what it looked like. There probably would have been some lamps. There would have been some guards here at times. So Seeing that little bit of a flicker of light's probably not all that strange. I'm going to kind of flip this around so you guys can kind of see the rest of what I see here. All right, next time you hear it, and now it's going to be light. And boom, just like that, it's daylight. All right, so I'm going to show you guys a little bit around in the daylight. I'm going to show you guys a couple different locations, but first and foremost, right where we left off at, this is the gunpowder magazine. This is what it looks like in the daylight. They're working on it inside, so I can't go in right now, but they are doing some remodeling to it. I figured they would have done it last year, so it'd be ready for this year. Behind me is the courthouse in the area. This is kind of the greens. Now, just to my left, down behind me, there's a called the Palace Green, and that would lead you down to where the governor's mansion is. There is the guardsman house, which you can see behind me. I did some checking up on stuff. That is a reproduction structure. The foundation was left, but the building itself had deteriorated. The gunpowder magazine itself is from the 1715, and is actually the earliest structure that was kind of secured and maintained by the state of Virginia. And as you kind of get onto the sidewalk, see there's a few more people out in the daylight to get around. Like I said, I just want to kind of let you guys see what this area looked like. And straight behind me, this road leads down to the Capitol building. So that's where the Capitol building is here in Williamsburg. I want to take you and show you guys a little bit of everything in kind of brief. I will probably do more in detailed talks about Williamsburg at a later date. But for the 250th anniversary of the Revolution and the events that took place, the gunpowder incident is one of the most important ones. And I wanted everyone to kind of see that. You see the horses go by. Kind of a cool thing to see. So there's a lot of people here in period costume, and they are basically just trying to show you what people would have looked like, how they would have worked. There are a lot of reenactors in the area, so it's kind of a cool place to come check out. But again, daylight hours, this is what the magazine looks like. This is where the gunpowder incident took place on the 20th to 21st of April in 1775, and then again on the 24th is when the colonists broke in and the spring gun set off and injured them, pretty much ending Lord Dunmore's tenure here in Virginia as far as the colonists were concerned, pushing him further and further out to sea. So I'm going to take you guys to two specific locations. I want to show you guys the Capitol building, and I'm going to show you guys the palace, so you guys can kind of see where these areas were before we move on to the next locations in America's 250th anniversary. All right, now during colonial times, the building you see behind me to my right shoulder is the Capitol building. Now, this is also a reconstruction. It had burnt down several times during the period in which this city was the capital city, but then afterwards it was struck by lightning and burnt down, and it wasn't reconstructed until the 20th century when the Rockefellers, in coordination with William and Mary, were reconstructing most of the town. But the foundation is original, and it's in its original location, and they actually had really great architectural renderings of what the building looked like, so they knew how to reconstruct it to this exact specifications, brick for brick. So, like I said, I'm going to do a more in-depth rundown on Williamsburg later on, but this is kind of showcased within this one video. The gunpowder magazine is just straight down the street from me, to the left of this building. This is where the House of Burgesses would have been meeting with the governor when he allowed them in session. Especially, like I said, he was trying to finance his, Dunmore wars against the Indians. So he needed the House of Burgesses votes to get that done. So that's where this will take place, right behind me. And next, I'm going to show you the gubernatorial palace. This was used up into during the Revolution, and Thomas Jefferson would have been the last governor to actually use it. It was the house that Patrick Henry used while he was governor of Virginia. So, all right, I'm going to head over to that one, and we'll show that one, and that'll be done. That'll be the end of Williamsburg for now. All right, now I am on the Palace Green. The Palace Green, as you see, goes quite a ways back to the main road through town. And why is it called the Palace Green, you may ask? Well, because right behind me, that's the palace. That's the gubernatorial palace. That would have been the royal governor's house during the pre-revolutionary period. And this is where Lord Dunmore actually resided during the gunpowder incident of April 1775. This is also from where he managed and did his Dunmore Wars against the Native Americans further out west. It was here that in early June of 75 that James Monroe and many of his patriots from William and Mary broke in and actually started stealing back some of the gunpowder, guns, and munitions that was being stored in the mansion. Inside the mansion are several period original firearms and swords, and a lot of other activities. The Williamsburg seems to be mostly open Tuesday through Saturday. Seems like most of everything is kind of closed on Mondays, which is the reason why I'm here on a Monday, because it's easier to get around and less traffic. But the buildings typically are open every day, but like a lot of things are kind of closed down except for Tuesday through Saturday. So if you want to come down and see a lot of this stuff, I recommend coming on a Monday. A lot less traffic. The main attractions are open. You're just like not going to be like fine dining inside any of the period buildings, but if you just want to get a good see of everything, Sundays and Mondays are like the best days. I prefer Mondays on most things. So behind me, like I said, this is the gubernatorial mansion. This is not the original. It was built on top of the foundations of the original. Thomas Jefferson did use this building briefly while he was the governor of Virginia and hated it. Absolutely hated it. Jefferson didn't seem to much like anything in Williamsburg and was very adamant to moving the capital to Richmond. Now, shortly before and during the gunpowder incident, the provisional, extra-legal Congress at the House of Burgesses was organizing and running, like the councils of safety and correspondence. Those were being kind of ran out of Richmond. So it kind of seemed fitting that the capital structure itself of the government to be moved to Richmond, and so he did so. Also, Williamsburg was under threat during the Revolution a couple times by regular forces, so moving it further up the river was a smart idea by Jefferson. So this is essentially the revolutionary area of Williamsburg. I will do a full, more in-depth rundown of Williamsburg some other time, but I just wanted to show you the 250th anniversary of the Revolution, some of these structures that led the Virginia colony to follow Massachusetts into revolution, and that this became a very, very quick continental conflict, not just a regional one. And that's why it's important that that we kind of see it. This was a regional, a whole, all-in unite or die situation for the colonies. So this is Nathaniel Gavronsky. I'm glad you enjoyed this show. I hope you guys follow and watch some of the other things that I'm going to be doing for the 250th anniversary of the United States and the American Revolution from Williamsburg, Virginia, the gubernatorial mansion. Have a wonderful day.